let me do, we're on here. I'll just start with, today is Wednesday, February 19th, 2003. This is the beginning of an interview with Frank Schiave. Schiave? At the Chemung Valley Historical Society. Mr. Schiave is 87 years old, having been born in New York City and Manhattan on October 17th, 1915. My name is Ed Van Wagen, and I will be the interviewer. Okay, Frank,
Your name is
go ahead.
Your name is not too rare because I worked at Naval McLeod years ago. We had an account, Van Wagen and Son.
Oh, there was a plumber in
Yeah.
Cortland, which is a cousin of my father's.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember the name.
Okay. Frank, were you drafted, or did you?
Oh, no. It all started back in the last day of 1932. I had graduated from high school. I was 16. Right after I was 17, I decided to go in the Navy, to grow up, actually. I got my father's permission. I went to the Navy the last day of 1932. And in those days, you didn't talk back to anybody. It was the best training ground in the world. I was on destroyers for a whole hitch, the old four-stack World War I destroyers. And I said it was like I had a bachelor's degree in World War II before World War II started, just from working. I meant informally, of course. I started as a seaman, and then I acceded to the signal bridge, and I got to be a qualified signal watchstander.
So you could do whip-wag.
And in 36, huh?
You could do whip-wag.
Oh yeah, I can still do it.
Can you?
I can still do probably better than 20 words a minute. That's
fantastic.
5-letter words. That's better than 2 a second.
Yeah.
It's great for upper body. I wish my legs were as good shape as my upper body.
Very good.
So I came out in 1936. It's a pretty good story. My ship, the destroyer, had been ordered to China. And I didn't have enough time to go to China. And this was a marvelous ship. A good captain, good crew.
Remember the name?
Alden, destroyer number 211. We were the #1 destroyer in the whole Navy, visual communication.
Really?
There's almost 200 destroyers. But anyway, the quality of the ship was excellent. I didn't have quite enough time to do, and everybody was after me, re-enlist or extend. And I started to do it, and then I thought, no, I want to go home and see my mother and father and dog. So I told the guys on the ship, I'll re-enlist in the fall, I'll come out to China, and I'll see you guys out there. I came home. I only had 90 days grace. In other words, I had to go back in. Just before the end of that, a friend of mine brought my girl, that's my wife now, over, and I forgot about that blessed deadline. And a couple of weeks later, I got my senses back, and I rushed over to the post office to go back in. The recruiting officer refused to take me.
Now, what was your rate at that time?
Signalman 3rd class.
Okay.
So here I was. He said, you can't get back in unless there's a war or a national emergency. And I said, well, can't you jimmy up the date? And he said, no, my office doesn't do that. Well, anyway, World War II came up. And at this time, this is a fair story. I, with a friend of mine, was digging a ditch for a farmer up on the Ridge Road to get some money for Christmas. And this was on Pearl Harbor Day, on December 7th. In the middle of the afternoon, the farmer came running out. He said, Pearl Harbor has just been bombed. And literally, I threw down my shovel, and it's still there as far as I know. Just like the Minutemen up at Concord the old day.
Yes.
I went home and told my wife we're moving home with her mother and father, and I'm going back in the Navy. And she never whimpered. And we did just that. Well, I went up to Buffalo right away to get in. My blood pressure was high. The doctor sent me back home. I went back up a week later, same doctor, and lots of sarcasm. So I was bound to get in. I went back up, going down the hall, and I see U.S. Coast Guard across the hall. I went in the Coast Guard, and I passed the same physical requirement.
Okay.
Went into the Coast Guard as signalman 3rd class.
Where was boot camp?
Huh?
Where was boot camp?
Oh, didn't have any. No, I had my boot camp back in the old Navy. I was a 3rd class petty officer. So I went into the Coast Guard, and they made an instructor out of me the same day, and the Coast Guard didn't have good signalman. A few days later, Yeoman came in. He said, we got a vacancy for signalman on the Leonard Wood. And I said, I'll take it. Well, the officer in charge said, "No, you're not. We need you here." And I said, "Sir, I'm wearing a seagoing uniform and I'm going to sea."
Good for you.
So they sent me down to Philadelphia. A real rotten day, slush, cold, miserable. I had my sea bag and hammock. I reported to the 4th Naval District. And the yeoman looked at my orders and he said, "What did you do to deserve this?"
Now, what was the date then, if you recall?
That would have been about March, latter part of March of 42.
Okay.
So anyway, I went aboard the Leonard Wood, it was a big assault transport. And the man at the gangway was a man named Doug Monroe, Congressional Medal of Honor winner later. So we got to be good friends. He informed me that I was not attached to the ship, but I was attached to a staff. They had an amphibious task group commander,
Okay.
U.S. Navy,
Yes.
with Navy staff
Oh,
on there. So I was on the staff. Well, anyway, we got underway down the Atlantic. Incidentally, there's another little story here. We had 1,800 soldiers on there from Uniontown Gap, Pennsylvania, and 13 nurses. So in those days, the Atlantic was full of U-boats.
Yes.
Every day.
wolf packs.
Terrible toll. So we're going down the Atlantic with a task group, a convoy. Battleship Texas, a big cruiser, there was everything. And about the second or third night, we're down off the Virginia Capes, and about 9:30, 21:30,
Mm-hmm.
I was on the Flying Bridge, the highest bridge, and one of the ship's officers had one of those nurses up on the Clover Bridge. There was a catwalk, and one of them lit a cigarette with a match.
Uh-oh.
It lit up the whole North Atlantic.
I bet.
There's some repercussion over that.
I can imagine.
But anyway, we got the head around. We went, our ship broke down, so we missed our big group. And we got repaired and we headed across the greater part of the Pacific in company with a Dutch ship. Tusitana was the name of that. Well, I had my first taste of realism one night, sometime during the middle of the night, way off on a port, little white light, a flare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the officer, the Commodore and the captain of the ship, the officers had quite a conference over what to do about it. And one of the officers said there could be American flyers over there dying of thirst. But then the captain decided he had 1,800 soldiers, he had about 800 or 900 in the crew, and the Japanese at that time, even though they had submarines that had come over to the west coast. So in other words, there's a possibility it was Japanese strike.
Real?
So they just decided to go on, and we went on. Well, anyway, we got to Wellington, New Zealand, a fine country. I have great respect for the New Zealand people. They're like we were 100 years ago. Clean, honest, hardworking. And they were glad to see us because their men were over in the African,
Right.
the British 8th Army.
Mm-hmm.
And the Japanese were almost to New Zealand. The old men they were coming to New Zealand too. That was part of their sphere of their taking over. So the old men and the women were organized into beach militia. They were going to defend. And so they were naturally glad to see us. That was June 1st of 42.
Okay.
Well, then after that, the Marines started coming down and so on and so forth. First little story, first meal that we had in New Zealand, I had about 9 of my gang, signal gang. We had steak and eggs, 2 and 6, 2 shillings 6 pence.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
like 49 cents.
Uh-huh.
When we finished dinner, we left some coins on the table, some half crowns and florins. We went out to the street and we're standing out there trying to decide what to do with the rest of the night. And our waitress came running out with our money. And she said, "Here, Yanks," she said, "you left us on the table."
Wasn't that nice?
So we told her, "We left that for you."
Uh-huh.
And she said, "You left that for me?" Well, we fooled around there, we practiced, and the Marines kept coming down. found that one of my best friends from Elmore was in the Marines. Benny Drake was his name. He had been in the Navy, had been all Navy heavyweight wrestling champ.
Really?
Clean liver.
Mhm.
The first meal on there, the Marines ate with us. Of course, I was enlisted then.
Mm-hmm.
Marine right across the table from me said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Elmore, New York." He said, "You're a man named Ben Drake?" And I said, "Heck yes, he's one of my best friends." He said, well, he was in their outfit, the Raiders.
Oh.
So I said, "Tell Ben, I got to go up on the bridge and relieve the watch. Tell him to come up."
Mm-hmm.
He came up and I said, "What the heck are you doing in the Marines?" He said, "Frank," he said, "this is a real outfit." He said, "If I had it to do over again, I'd never gone in the Navy."
Really? Like
We
the Marines?
landed Ben at Guadalcanal. We landed him at Tulagi.
Mhm.
Tulagi,
Mhm.
Voodoo, and Tanambogo, 3 little islands, 19 miles from Guadalcanal.
Right.
And that was the hot spot. Those Marines had big casualties for 3 days. They were up against the cream of the, oh, great. Oh my gosh. New Britain. Yeah, I know it well. I know more about Guadalcanal than I do about Elmore.
Mm-hmm.
We got underway after we were combat loaded, and we got underway. We had a practice landing at some island called Coral, a real disastrous, and everything went bad. However, this is not a bad sign. If everything goes smooth is when you start to worry.
Yes.
It's just like on the stage, I guess.
Yes.
Well, we got to Tulagi, and as I said, that was the hotbed. And Benny lived through that. Then he got over to Guadalcanal, and then things got tough over there. And my group, we made 9 trips in and out of Guadalcanal. It took 5.5 months to secure Guadalcanal. They were tremendous naval night battles.
They use Higgins boats?
Huh?
Did they use Higgins boats, landing craft?
Oh, yeah, in those days, there was no ramps. The Marines had to jump off the bow. Those were the first Higgins boats.
Is it before
As the
Higgins?
war went on,
Yes.
the ramps came and
Okay.
they could run out. And Guadalcanal got pretty bad. We were run out of there as many times as we got in to relieve those Marines,
Mm-hmm.
because we had gone out and left them high and dry. One of the stories I try to put into my talks to the children, we had a bugler on that particular ship. He was a bugle master.
Mm-hmm.
And if you probably know about bugle calls, if they're done the way that they're meant to, they can be inspiring.
Yes.
Well, the first day, we'd had our first air attacks. And we had our baptism of fire, evening colors. So we face aft, tension aft, and the bugler blew evening colors. And way over, in the west, of course, was an island. And I thought to myself, it looks like a big tombstone over there. Well, that developed to be Sable Island. The next night, well over 1,000 Americans lost their lives there. The Japanese came in and sunk 3 of our heavy cruisers.
Did they?
Astoria, Quincy, and Vincennes, and an Australian cruiser, Canberra.
Yes.
Well, things were bad, desperate. We didn't even get to finish unloading, but we had to get out of there. And we left those Marines high and dry. Well, we went and we combat loaded, and then we went back up. The night before our transport approach,
Mm-hmm.
it was not dark yet. It was not too long after sunset. I was getting a message from the cruiser Pensacola, urgent, urgent, and it said, reverse Japanese force approaching, reverse course, setback operation order 24 hours.
Ah.
So we had to, by visual communication, because we
Mhm.
couldn't use radio,
Right.
get it out to all these ships. And we missed one of them that went in there the next morning, saw some ships, thought they were us, they were
Mhm.
Japanese. It was an AKA, a attack cargo ship
Mm-hmm.
from They got out and came back. They rejoined us about the next noon. And I remember our Commodore, on whose staff I was a very relieved person.
Wow.
But anyway, that's the way it was. We were run out of there. We were in and out, and we had out.
Was there any shortage of supplies?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there was.
Oh, yeah, we didn't even get to finish unloading at a different time. In those days, they had a concept of an air attack.
Right.
That's another thing, I gotta give the Australian Coast Watchers credit. Many of them were caught, tortured, and murdered. They watched the airstrips and they gave us warnings. We'd get warnings like 20 medium bombers escorted by 20 Zeros. Estimated time of arrival, 20 minutes, so on.
Incredible.
But we got these constantly. And we got plenty of air attacks, and we lost a lot of ships.
I don't think many people know about Australian Coast Watchers.
You know, it's one of the bravest fleets in the world.
Yes.
Because the Japanese found a lot of them and tortured them. And without them, we'd have had a lot bigger casualties.
Yes.
Well, what we used to, early in the war, when we get these warnings, we'd stop unloading. And we'd get underway and we'd go out and cruise around according to prearranged patterns and so on. Well, then it was decided that supplies were so vital and we were only wasting time going out there and circle around. They found us anyway. So they didn't do that. Just manned the guns, and actually it worked out better. But these are things that we had to learn.
Sure.
Well, Guadalcanal, as they say, lasted 5.5 months. And then the islands around there, Solomon Islands.
Before it was secured?
Yeah,
Okay.
5.5 months. And there was some unholy nights.
I get that.
One of them I remember quite well. Am I talking too much here?
No, you're just doing fine.
October 16th, I remember it well, it was before my birthday. I got a message from the beach signal tower, condition black. And I said, what is condition black? Counter invasion.
Ooh.
Well, they were coming down with everything. Things were bad. Now, our admiral, a man named Gormley, never came to Guadalcanal. He was New Mea, New Caledonia, over by Australia. And actually, he should never had the job. He was probably timid in character, but he just didn't utilize his planes and ships. Well, the very next day, we took our ships into Tulagi Harbor. We had them formed in single column back there. Destroyers were out protecting us. Going in, it was like going into a river channel. On a hillside, there was a big yellow sign with black block letters. So I put the long glass on it. Right up to the condor, it said, very plainly, it said, kill Japs. Exclamation point. The second line said, kill more Japs. Exclamation point. Signed, Admiral Bull Halsey.
Halsey, yes.
Halsey had been, well, everybody felt better. Me too.
That's a great morale
All of a
booster.
sudden, you felt you had a leader. You had somebody
Yes.
who followed this guy. So actually, it was quite a turning point. Just that. Well, as it went on, I traveled with the staff on 2 more ships, including a sojourn on a Dutch ship, the Nordam. We took the first merchant ships into a combat area with 7 American destroyers for escort.
Okay.
And, well, we went to another miracle. We took Marines off Guadalcanal and took them to Australia, and we just didn't anything to be useful. Well, then we got combat loaded for an invasion of Bougainville, another big base.
Yes.
You know. So, before this, I got to get back to the story.
It's okay.
In May
Yes.
of that year, we were in American Samoa, Pago Pago. We were having practice landings with some new Marines that had just come out, and we were given practice landing under tropical conditions. The Commodore's messenger came up to the bridge and he said, hey, Skip. He said, the old man wants to see you down in his office. Well, I didn't even know where his office was. We didn't go near that.
Yeah.
Although we were in battle stations, my battle station read Commodore, I was with him. It was a real tribute that was. An honor, I could say. Well, anyway, I walked into his office. He was rather a severe person, class of 1911.
Oh my goodness.
Very abruptly, he looked up and he said, Schiave, I'm sending a letter to Washington recommending you for a commission.
Oh. Yeah, hold that up.
Right. I don't expect you to read this, but that's the letter.
That's okay. Good. Yes.
That letter made me a commissioned officer.
Terrific. Can we make a copy of this?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
This is what I looked like at that time.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right. No, may I see that, please? I like to look.
What's that?
Your picture in your navy, your blues. Okay. Yeah, great. What year was this taken, Frank?
40, it would have been 43.
43.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know what to say. I'm an old sea dog.
Right.
I never thought of being an officer. I never did anything beyond high school. And I got my senses together. I said, well, sir, matter of fact, I don't think much of it. I haven't been to college or the academy, and I don't consider myself qualified to hold it down properly. And I said, the second place, all I expect to do is make chief. I expect to be chief in just a couple of weeks, which was true. They promoted me faster than the conditions allowed. Anyway, it was due to my background.
Well, you had the experience.
So I told him that, but I didn't think much of it. He said, if I didn't think you could hold it down properly, as you said, he said, I wouldn't be recommending you for it. He said, you understand that? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, anytime you feel badly about holding a commission, he said, you look at these college-trained officers that they're sending me from the States.
Yeah. Now, Fred, do you remember what your pay increase was?
Not precisely.
Okay.
Well, I figured he threw it out. I said, aye, sir, I got the heck out of there. Well, that was May. October 16th, we rendezvoused with another task group preparatory to invasion. There was a Coast Guard ship in it. And I had been on that ship. I knew all the signals. They took position 500 yards on the beam. Always did. Unofficially, we talked. They called me a lot of dirty names. I wasn't a friend of theirs. I understand this. A few minutes later, an official dispatch came over from that ship addressed to our staff that I had been commissioned since July 20th. I was commissioned almost 3 full months and didn't know it.
Retroactive.
I was actually in the Coast Guard, but on Navy ships and Navy staff. The President, on 20th of July of 43, appointed 13 enlisted men. All guys like me, probably old sea dogs. Evidently, the Navy realized it had a shortage for people
Experienced.
like us.
Yes.
Where the academic training wasn't as important as a lot of combat duty and sea duty. So I was an officer 3 months ago. It's quite a transition, as you know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You know that.
Sure.
Underway on a big ship.
Yeah.
They moved me from the crew's quarters into the officer's wardroom for my first dinner. A couple of the staff officers helped me. By the way, they're both still good friends of mine.
That's great. You're still kind of in touch with them.
Yeah, one of them was a world-renowned person. Worked for 7 presidents. He was in Who's Who in America for probably 15 years. Quite a person. Well, anyway, he was one of the junior staff officers. So he and another man who's a retired captain down in Virginia now literally took me by the hand, and so I sat at the ensign's table. There were 14 ensigns, and I already was senior to 2. I sat 3 from the foot of the table.
Yeah.
So we stood there waiting to sit down when the executive officer came in. And I noticed in front of my plate there was a little brass figure of some kind. I thought, what the heck is that? So I turned to the ensign who was junior and I said, what's that thing? He said, well, that's where the Miss Boys start the food. And I thought, holy crap. I intended to see how they did it and how much. It's a lot different from the crew's quarters.
I bet. Sure.
You eat with one hand and guard the food with the other.
Quite a change.
I got through it, okay, with their help. And the first thing you know, they put me right coding and uncoding, and I carried the operation orders around to all the ships that were anchored there, to the commanding officers only. So here, all of a sudden, a couple of days before that, I was just a guy saying I'm signal watchers, and then all of a sudden I'm trusted with the most secret everything that there was.
Now, did your quarters change?
Oh yeah, I went with a lieutenant. Yeah. Well, then they get rid of me. That's the policy. They get you away from your.
Right.
So they sent me back to States. and I reported into Long Beach 11 District Headquarters, and the personnel officer, an executive officer.
No, that was in California.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he said, "Where do you want duty?" And I said, "I don't want duty. I just want to go home and see my family, and I'll go back out." He said, "Where do you live?" I said, "Elmira, New York." He said, "Well, we'll transfer you to New York, the 3rd District. You take it from there." So I had time home. They sent me to Manhattan Beach as an instructor.
Where?
The Manhattan Beach Training Station.
Okay.
Giant Coast Guard man. With my combat duty, I was quite welcome there. They gave me charge of all the signalmen and quartermasters that were going out on what they call patrol frigates. A frigate was a ship a lot like a destroyer or schooner. And the Coast Guard was going to man, I think, 27 of them, and the Navy, 5 or 6. So they gave me all those crews for training. An interesting story here. I don't know if these are interesting.
Sure.
So to me, it was quite a big thing. The first day at Manhattan Beach, after I had been designated chief instructor,
Mm-hmm.
he took me into an auditorium, commander, and all these enlisted men were out there that were going on those ships. Chiefs, first class, seconds, thirds, dash marks.
Right.
Here I am, I'm a brand new ensign. New gold even. The commander brought me out there to the stage and introduced me. You know, I knew what those guys were thinking. You could hear it.
Probably thought you were a 90-day wonder.
This guy, this college kid gonna treat us?
Right.
Well, I knew the attitude well, but fortunately, with a pair of Semaphore flags, I didn't say a word. I got those flags and I gave it to them. I started in at 3rd class speed, second, first, and faster. Well, the whole attitude changed. You could feel the atmosphere change just like that. Because I told them with the flags who I was and where I had been. All of a sudden, I had respect. Couldn't have been better.
No, that's terrific.
The attitude changed. Well, I stayed there. I moved my wife down.
Mm-hmm.
I had one child. We had a child when I went in, or and I stayed there only about 2 or 3 months, and I got a little tired of it. I went home, told my wife I'm going back to sea. You know, she almost divorced me. She was mad. They'd been out 20 months combat duty before. But anyway, she loudly proclaimed right out from the front yard, we had a little cottage on Officer Road, and she said, "Our daughter Marjorie, age 3, has got more sea duty riding the Staten Island ferry than most of these officers."
Yeah, I get that.
I went back out. Hazardous duty was called an FP, frightened personnel. We were painted jungle green, and we drew shallow drafts, so we could sneak around at night.
Yeah.
The primary mission was to follow up invasions. We'd haul in aviation gas, haul off wounded Marines and soldiers, and get out if we could. We didn't even have a doctor or corpsman. I was junior watch officer when I went aboard. There was 4 officers. The executive officer graduated at the University of Texas, but he was unfit for sea duty. And it didn't take the captain long to get rid of him. When we got underway from New York, going out past Ambrose Light, we had a tow behind us, a 120-foot air sea rescue vessel. We were taking around the West Coast. There was a crew of 7 on that. Well, anyway, I was up on the flying bridge. I was an ensign. The executive officer of the ship, Lieutenant was off at the deck. Well, in the afternoon watch, he had the steward bring up an armchair from the wardroom and a pitcher of lemonade and a novel he was reading. So he's sitting on the bridge. You know, the officer of the deck is responsible to the captain for everything. So he's sitting there sipping a lemonade, reading a novel. He couldn't even see out. There's a helmsman and a lookout. Well, the captain, fine old-time, he had been an instructor at the academy, a good man. He came up, and I waited for it to happen, and it did. You should have heard it, what he said. The last part of it was something like, "I'll wrap that chair right around your stupid neck." Well, it didn't take long. We got to Key West. this man demonstrated that he didn't have the ability to be second in command. So the captain got rid of him. He sent a dispatch to Washington requesting an immediate relief and one junior to me so he could make me the executive officer.
Good.
So it worked out pretty well. And we went out to the Pacific. And,
Now, you went through the canal?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I've been through there 7 times.
Have you?
I liked it. I enjoyed it. But I always had to work there, but I know it was
Uh-huh.
marvelous.
Yeah.
When we got to Balboa, on the other side of the canal, the pilot took us through, and I took him up to our room for a drink. I asked him about the possibilities of my coming down there after the war, if I lived through it, get a job as a pilot, and he said positively not. Pilots associations are so tied up, all up and down the coast. They're excellent jobs.
Well, yeah.
It's your father and your grandfather
Mhm.
and all this. So we went out to the Pacific. We made a run to a place called Morotai. It's an island
Mhm.
north of New Guinea, halfway to the Philippines. That was the end of the line then. That's where the captain saw his first guns fired in anger. It had an interesting thing there. Tokyo Rose came on
Oh, yes.
that afternoon, and she said she had a message for the boys on the Tangier. The Tangier was one of our seaplane mothership auxiliary.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I'm sorry to tell you boys, but you're going to have your last dinner on the ship tonight because our sons of heaven are going to come over and blast your ass. Well, they came over, but they didn't sink her. But the captain saw his first shots fired in anger.
Isn't that something that Tokyo Rose knew?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had another instance of that back when I was enlisted and we were down in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
We went ashore in Auckland, New Zealand. She came and she said, if you boys that are going ashore on Liberty in Auckland tonight, she said, if you'll notice the clock on the ferry building is 10 minutes slower than the clock on the city hall. There were 2 major buildings.
So that told you there were spies.
There, yeah. So we made a name for ourselves on that Morotai trip. And the next thing you know, we're in a big convoy going up to the Philippines. And the Philippines had just been taken. Leyte, the island of
Leyte.
Leyte.
Yes.
MacArthur hadn't got back yet.
Right.
Or that go. Well, we got into one of the worst trips. It ranked with the romance runs, where that goes. We had 108 ships when we left Leyte. It was a day after, 2 days after Christmas, December 26th.
And the
And
year?
we had been warned, the Navy tried to warn us about, this is an odd thing. The operation order for this trip, we were going to an island called Mindoro,
Mm-hmm.
halfway across the Philippines. And it said, the best defense against so-called was in quotation, the Navy wouldn't admit. The best defense against so-called suicide planes is a concentrated fire, small caliber weapons at close range,
Mm-hmm.
which was true. But they still didn't do that. You know, and we got underway the second day out, and they came. Flash red. We're a little ship, we're back in the middle of the convoy. The admiral was way up there with 108 ships, and we had destroyers and so on, had everything. Zero came from the back of us. He flew down close to the water between columns, and I wondered what the heck is he doing down there? I know now what he was doing. He flew right through,
Mm-hmm.
and turned around, came right back into a Liberty ship. I was looking at it. It was 1,000 yards away. It was
Mhm.
half a mile.
Mm-hmm.
It was an ammunition ship. He hit that bridge. I can see those guys up there just as well as I can see you. I can just I saw them shoot right into it. That plane hit the flying bridge and sheet of flame. The next thing you know, she went. And I swear I saw that superstructure start to go, just like an eggshell.
Mm-hmm.
And then saw nothing because the concussion at a half mile almost wrecked us.
Yes.
That's a half a mile. Well, our helmsman was knocked out. And I went down, unversed to the navigation bridge and took the wheel and spun it because there's a wall of water like that coming at us. See, that explosion blew a 360-degree hole in the water. Mountainous. And I got the bow around, and we went way over, didn't capsize, and by the time the second one, there was another one back of it, we were just like climbing a hill. Well, then I stopped to look around to see what was going on, and the ship that had been ahead of us was over on the port bow, burning. She'd been hit. I didn't even know it. You always hope you do the right thing first. Because the kids always ask me in these lectures, were you scared? And I said, you're always aware of it, but that's secondary. You're there to do a job.
Right.
I was scared of, well, what I was scared of is I was going to make the wrong decision. Like I directed all the fire from both beams forward
Did you?
to what planes came from there. I was always afraid. Maybe I'd have us shooting at this guy and maybe I should have picked this one up first. But that's a matter of luck and
It's quite a coordination job.
But that was a pretty rough deal. The official Navy history gave us 11 pages. Samuel L. M. Morrison.
Really?
Yeah, we had, that day, we lost that ship, it was a Liberty. John Burke was the name of it. And we lost an LST that was alongside of us. And, see, where's the third one? So the ship of us. We lost three close to day. But we lost more. We got into Mindoro. They came in and blew up another animal. And that one blew us up on a reef and disabled us to where we had to get towed out. And we weren't even hit. Concussion.
Yes.
It's hard, I can't think of words to describe it.
I people.
Liberty ship loaded with American bombs. But that's the way the one, and then I find out later, after I got home even, my wife had saved a clipping. Time magazine said the Japanese had mistaken us for MacArthur coming back.
Oh, yes.
And then they went on.
That's why.
All day and all night.
That's why.
At night, they'd keep flare up over us. So that the young kids that were getting to be suicide pilots, you know, we heard that the kids like out of high school, all they learned was how to pilot. And they learned no navigation, no gunnery, no nothing. And some of those airstrips are only 30 miles from where we were.
Really?
So the other pilots, Japanese, would keep a flare up over us all night.
So the kamikazes could
All
see them.
these kids had to do was we get it, take off, and see the flare, and go and get it, and they're harrowing days. Those were. So actually, I think we may have lost 8 ships on the way up there.
Oh.
It's like with everything else. It got better. Our fighter planes. I remember there was an American ace named Dick Bong. He flew P-38s. He was flying onto the strip up there at Mindoro. Incidentally, when we got into Mindoro, there was wreckage, there was a ship burning here, and it was a mess. Well, a PT boat came alongside, and I guess I knew the captain pretty well, a nice young guy. And he wanted to, I said, story before that. The Army captain came out on the boat, and I met him. And he said to me, how many rounds of 50 caliber and 40 millimeter can you spare? And I said, none. We're going to draw some from you. He said, like hell.
So you guys were short.
Yeah. Well, then the PT boat came alongside, and I got so I knew him that we used to give him some fresh water or whatever we
We had
could.
twin 50s.
And I talked to him, yeah. Well, they were good against the kamikaze. Before ships I was on, we had 20 millimeters. They had an explosive shell.
Right.
But they weren't as good as the 50 calibers for the kamikaze. 50 calibers fire fast.
Yes.
You'd get twin 50s going into a plane, and it was much more effective.
Well, those planes didn't have much armament.
No.
No. They were light and fast.
I sent to that ensign, I said, did you see the barrage we put up coming in here? And we had about 100 ships left, maybe, all shooting at one plane coming down before daylight. It was a bomber.
Was it?
Yeah, and you could just see that thing tear apart up there. Well, anyway, I sent to that ensign, did you see that barrage we put up? And he said, yes. He said it was a good one, but he said, I saw a better one. And I said, where did you see a better one? He said, right here. The Japanese came in with a cruiser task group to shell the airstrip.
Right.
And our people, we went out. And he said, they put a better one yet. You should have seen it. So I said to him, I said, what did you do? He said, well, he said, you see that island over there? He said, I went over there and hid. He said, he said the Japanese were straddling him at whatever it was, 4 or 5 miles. He said, I'd have gone in anyway if I figured I had a chance of getting one torpedo off. But he said it would have just been plain suicide.
Really?
For the
Yes.
crew and the, so, but things moved around up there. See what else is there.
So you were aboard ship most of the time.
Oh yeah, I like sea duty.
Yes.
Yeah, they'd have a hard time getting me ashore now. Because my wife, by the way, our second daughter was born right up there when I was up in the Philippines. So she was born on Christmas Eve. So that would have been, 44. And I didn't know she was born until the last of January.
Yeah, how did your mail get through regularly?
Well, it could. Things up there were pretty bad.
Yeah.
So we had another child then. I tell people I've been away for 4 years. She doesn't like. But anyway, she had a good wife.
Uh-huh.
And she
Good
raised the
lady
kids.
wife.
She
Yeah.
did. Well, I was off.
Yeah.
But I don't, I still hear from quite a few of the guys.
Well, that's good. Now, do you get a chance to go to any reunions?
Not too many.
Uh-huh.
I went to one of the Naval Canal transports, the early transports, Hunter Liggett, Coast Guard man. They had one a few years ago at Virginia Beach.
Yes.
So the way the story goes, that, the second day at Guadalcanal, we shot down 3 Bettys, Mitsubishi.
I know.
Quite a nice plane, good plane, by the way.
Twin engine. Yeah.
And we shot down 3. Well, now, 50-some years later, in a hotel in Virginia Beach and a few beers, it's 6 instead of 3. My wife said it'll be 9 in a couple more.
Uh-huh.
But as one of the guys on my last act, I talked to him last night in Augusta, Georgia. He said the circle's getting smaller.
Yes. Well, that's why we're doing this. Yeah.
Some of the ships don't have enough for reunions.
Uh-huh.
And it's regrettable, but we're supposed to be dying off now at 1,500 a day,
Yes.
something like that. And I never thought I'd get to this point, but my wife said I was probably in just as great danger going ashore with the guys.
Sure.
In some of those towns, you know. But it's good. I enjoyed it. And I liked the service.
Did you ever get to Pearl Harbor?
Oh yeah, I wasn't there for that.
Right, I understand.
Oh sure, I was there. 1935.
My goodness.
It was great. You could get a whole pineapple on a stick, skin,
Yeah.
for a nickel. Dual.
Uh-huh.
And I liked it. I enjoyed military work.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I didn't even mind the food. People kick about beans or they kick.
Sure. Yeah.
I look forward, both as an enlisted and as an officer. I had, so we used to live on Route 14. We had quite a lot of acreage down there. But I had 3 reunions on my last ship there. I found
here.
10 of the guys from around the country and brought them here.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah. It was a nice thing. Of course, some of those guys are gone now.
Yeah.
So I got another picture here yet to show you.
Okay.
I don't know if they would like this one. There are people who would criticize this.
Oh, that's great. Sure. Yeah, that's great.
No undershirt,
No,
no
that's all right.
buttons, no nothing. Out of uniform.
Right. I can understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I put that up there. So, yeah. We had one black man on that ship. Good man.
Mm-hmm.
Best I've seen him 3 or 4 times. He came to the reunions.
Oh, that's
When
good.
they first came to my house, the guys hadn't seen each other in over 50 years. Everybody's wondering, am I going to know? Everybody would know him.
Yes.
See,
Uh-huh.
In fact, he said to me, by the way, he's a very streetwise man, but a good man. He was just as useful on the
Do you know
ship
what
as
the
I-
highest rank he?
He was our steward, actually.
Okay.
But I gave him a battle station. I put him on a 40 millimeter, something they didn't do much in those days. But he had such good coordination and presence of mind. He was a trainer. They shot down a suicide one night with only not too many yards right off our fantail. So it showed some devotion to duty right there. He said it to me, he said, "How in the devil did you find me? Harlem?" And I said, "Julius, if you hadn't been arrested in New York State, I never would have found you."
Is that how you found it?
Your son-in-law,
The police records?
Our son-in-law was state police.
Oh.
Found him for me.
Well, that's good.
Julius was a good man. We had some rednecks on there, but we had no friction. You can't have friction when your life is on the line. It overrides that other stuff.
Well, you were pretty close. I mean, aboard ship, everybody knew everybody.
Well, anyway, I got blood pressure went sky high. I've had hypertension for 60-some years. And it's a miracle that I'm alive. But my blood pressure got up, and they sent me back to the States, and I finally, they discharged me with a medical discharge, honorable conditions, all this at
Where were you discharged?
Sampson, US. December 22nd of 45. So, of course, I'd like to state in wartime, senior officers like guys like me, were OC dogs. But in peacetime, there's some areas where they figured you don't know enough to use the right fork.
Oh, yes. Yes, okay.
In the academy people. I ran into very little of that. I had, wherever I went, I had great respect. They say one of the greatest honors that I ever had, I had quite a few, but one of the best was when I was on that staff with that Navy task group commander.
Right.
The last 3 ships I was on with him, my battle station read Commodore.
Really?
Ships were down. Now, he's the guy that's in charge of them.
Yes.
And he had only a very little nucleus near him. And I was proud to have been, to be one of them.
So what was your rank when you were discharged?
Lieutenant senior grade.
Okay.
So, I didn't see much reason. Up in the Philippines, we got towed back to a port to wait for a seagoing tug to tow us down to Atlanta, and they had already built a rough officers club. They still had an occasional air tank. So one afternoon, I'm over there and I'm drinking whiskey and water, and I'm sitting around the table, lieutenant commanders and below. So Lieutenant Commander, regular Navy, he kept looking over at me. I knew what he was looking for a ring, academy.
Oh, I see, yes.
And he said, "What class are you in, Lieutenant?" I said, "Or what midshipman school did you go to?" And I said, "I had none of that, sir. I was commissioned from Sigelman First Class by the President." And he said, "Well, man, he said, you must have a lot of trouble learning to navigate, not having had the advantages of higher mathematics, higher education." And I said, "Well, sir, I've been navigator of the ship that I'm on for 9 months, and she hasn't been on the rocks yet." So he let the conversation drop. And I had a couple more, and I'm not belligerent, but I thought I'd better say something. I called across the table, and I said, "Commander, if you'd open your eyes a little bit, look around this Navy of ours, you'll find that the best navigators you got are these old chief quartermasters."
Right.
I said, "Some of those guys didn't graduate from school, grade school, and they're holding up people like you all over the Navy." There's an element of truth in this.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes.
Back in the old days, on the destroyers, regular Navy, every noon, when we're out with a fleet, we got to run up a noon position. The executive officer would be navigator. He'd have a position, and the chief quartermaster would have a position. 9 times out of 10, they'd give us the chief's position to run up before the admiral got hold of it.
Frank, what was the last battle that you were in?
It would be Philippine Liberation, Lady Mindoro.
Did you get the Philippine Liberation
Oh, yeah.
Medal?
Yeah,
Oh.
Chemung Star. I wrote it down on Major Engagement Bronze Star.
Right.
Solid.
Yeah, could you tell us the medals that you were
So
awarded?
I wrote that on there.
Okay.
Two of them down in the Solomons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. So,
Do you remember the day the war ended? Where were you?
yeah. I think I was already home, I'm sure. What, that would have been what, in August?
Yes, VJ Day.
Yeah, I was either home or on the way home.
Okay.
And so,
Yeah.
let's see, what else would there be? I had great associations. This one man, am I talking too long?
No.
This one man, John B. Fisher, I say, who's who in America? He came to us from Harvard Communication School. There's a Phi Beta Kappa.
Uh-huh.
Brilliant man, Back Bay, Boston. Quite a person.
Yeah.
Until then, he was a junior officer.
Yeah.
He was sent to our staff. So we were at Guadalcanal. And he was a representative of the Commodore to give us, I was a signalman then. Mr. Fisher was being brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
but he hadn't learned the actual operation in the war at sea. He learned what they taught him at Harvard Com School. So up on the bridge, he called to the senior signalman, first class.
Yeah.
And he said, signalman, he said, run up, pennant 6, pennant 4, sail, hypo, William. It was an erroneous call. And the signalman was going to run it up anyway. He knew it. He just as soon get an officer in trouble as hell. But that would have been a tough one because we were the flagship. We were in charge of all those ships.
Oh, you were on the
If
flagship?
we had run up an erroneous hoist, we'd have gotten back a meatball interrogatory from every ship there at the Commodore. And he was not the type to appreciate it.
Mhm.
He never smiled. So I caught it quick and I called to the signalman. I said, hold it, Bert. And I said, Mr. Fisher, that's an erroneous call. And he said, what should it be? And I said, so-and-so, so-and-so. He called to the signalman. He said, belay my last command and run up what I had just told him. Sometime later, he came over and held out his hand. And he said, my name is John Fisher. He said, I want you to know I will never forget what you just did for me. He said, my career would have been hanging from the
Mhm,
yard
you
along
saved
with
us.
my toenail. When I Commodore, Fisher had never gotten back on the bridge.
Uh-huh.
He'd have been sent to his room and transferred. Oh yeah, it was that bad. But we kept track. We kept track all these years. He taught.
So you still hear from him?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's just opening a new lecture tour in Florida. He taught at Rollins College down there, but before that, Senator Saltonstall,
Mm-hmm.
Fisher was on his staff. Saltonstall went to Washington, he took Fisher with him.
Good.
And Fisher got lots of connections down there, congressmen, presidents. I've got an article home that told about Miami wrote him up, Miami paper. He'd worked with 7 presidents.
Did he?
And who's who in America? I used to go look him up. He was appointed by President Eisenhower to this and that commission. Decorated by the Shah of Iran for conspicuous service.
Really? Quite a history.
I got one. I've kept all these letters. They're all classics in the English language.
I bet.
He wrote and said that he had gotten into an automobile accident near Lincoln Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the hospital when Senator Dirksen, you remember Everett
Sure.
Dirksen? Top
Everett.
Republican,
Everett
went to
Dirksen.
see him.
Yeah.
And he said, while you're recuperating, he said, we've got a job for you. And so Fisher said, I'm now ensconced in a Taj Mahal-like office in the U.S. Capitol building where my secret number is this and that. And my title is Consultant to the Republican Leadership of the Congress. So this guy's no sissy.
No. Pretty
He's
influential.
down in Florida. 2 years ago, last we were in Florida, we went to lunch with him again.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very gratified that we hung out all these years. He's had some great positions. I wish I could remember some of them. But that was John Fisher. And the other guy stayed in the Navy, a retired horse driver.
Really?
He's in a upper scale officer's retirement place in Sterling, Virginia.
How many hash marks did you have on your uniform?
Well, actually 14 years. Some of them were reserve, but I never too happy with the reserve. But I did it for a little while.
Sure.
I enjoyed it. As I say, I graduated at 16, and that's too young.
Uh-huh.
When I went in the Navy in those days.
You couldn't even buy a beer.
No. Well, in those days, it didn't matter. It was
Yeah.
back in 32, 33. It's,
Frank, do you belong to any Navy organizations now? Or just reunions?
I still belong to Pearl Harbor Officers Club.
Do you? I didn't know there was one. Uh-huh.
No, actually, what's I say? All the, Guadalcanal vets.
Good.
I belong to all the, I've got cards.
What'd you do after the war?
We worked for Naval and McLeod. Do you remember them?
Sure.
That's why I told you.
That's right, we started
And
with it, didn't we?
And son.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Geez, mine.
Since Louise told me your name. Well, you used to know Tangstrands, didn't you?
Yes.
I went out there one time. Nancy was, she had a group of Girl Scouts.
Uh-huh.
And she had me come out there and show them some knots and stuff like that.
I'm just surprised that you can remember Semaphore.
Oh, well, I stayed with it.
Because I have a friend he's 85, and he was a radio officer
Oh,
on a destroyer,
oh, great.
but he couldn't remember.
I still know that code too. Whenever I go, 2 weeks ago, I've been invited up to Horseheads Middle School. They have what they call a teach-in.
Yes.
It's a marvelous thing.
Uh-huh.
They get a lot of veterans up there, and we talk directly to the students.
Good.
We did it last year and this year.
Uh-huh.
It generates a fine feeling. Faculty, students, they call us presenters
Mm-hmm.
and visitors, but a fine thing, and good for the students. They don't have much of this stuff,
I know.
and they behave perfectly. I really
Well, you've
enjoyed
got quite a story there to keep their attention.
it. Yeah, it worked out well.
Uh-huh.
And that was designed so that the students did the interviewing, and then they had to write essays, which will all be published into.
But I don't have to do that.
Yeah. When I gave the talks here, I got lots of thank you notes from individual students,
Mm-hmm.
but significantly, only one was written in longhand. They're all printed. I've got probably, I don't know how many around it in the whole house. Only one was written in longhand. The penmanship was big when I was in school.
Yes.
I was not that good a writer.
It's just about a lost art.
And spelling. I was a good speller. And now you see mistakes on TV as 4-letter words. These are all college students.
I know.
See, when I got to be a signalman, that spelling thing helped me a lot.
Yeah.
The Commodore, he liked to use big words.
Did he?
It didn't bother me any, because I get up there and the guy on the other ship had it.
Now, you said you used a spy glass. You didn't use binoculars?
Well, the long glass was better. Binoculars are good like at night.
Uh-huh.
In the daytime,
The thing has run out, so we can say anything you want to. It just went beep. Yeah.
they had 20 power.
This has been fun,
On the
Frank.
big ships, we had 42 power.
Oh my God.
Great.
Yeah.
At Tulagi in the Marines, first Marine invasion, they had a Brigadier General Rupertus was in charge of the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
So he was on our ship, the flagship. So I've been watching the beach. I was supposed to report anything that I saw. The Marines were just starting to hit the beach. So I was on that class. Somebody came over and elbowed me off. And I started, and it was him, the general. He wanted to look. He got on there. I don't think he actually saw anything. But, so he stepped aside and I got back on the. A little later, same general elbow and he pushed me aside. Semaphore.
Oh, yeah. See, my brother took boot at Sampson.
Oh,
See, I was only 10 years old.
oh,
So, and Dell was 20. And, yeah, he went to England. And
Sure.
I think he, from what I know, he drove a Higgins boat,
oh,
D-Day.
oh boy.
And he came back, and he just wouldn't talk about anything. He carried a bayonet on his leg.
What?
A bayonet
Oh,
on his leg, because you couldn't carry, you know, anything. And my mother received his watch, and she took it to a jeweler. We lived in Ithaca. And he said, it's been an explosion. But he never said anything. This is terrific.
this taken back when I was seaman.
Uh-huh. Well, we want to make copies of all this. Can we keep it for about a week?
Sure, yeah.
And we'll make
Here's
sure
one
you
of
get them
those.
back. Oh my God, you're a handsome guy. I want to ask you a question. Why in your what the hell were these called? Skivvies?
Dungaree.
Dungarees. Were they tied in the back with a string?
Maybe some of them might have been.
Okay. Now, what was the reason for the flared or bell bottoms?
You know, I'm not sure of that. I've known about some items like the uniform, but that, I think it was just to make them look solid and bow-legged, not bow-legged.
Somebody told me it was so that you could
Get out of them easy.
really quick and you could tie them in a knot. And you
Because
could,
they were all tight up here.
yeah. And that you could tie them in a knot and you could use them for like
Yeah,
a
oh,
life
yeah,
saver.
it's fine. The bow of the destroyer,
Oh my God.
taken from the bridge.
You know, people just, kids, they just don't realize. Pretty handsome guy there.
Oh, I was in good shape. I was in good shape and happy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, those are terrific. Like to keep
I can
these.
leave you those. I
and
should
take,
take, these are off the wall. You want to keep them too?
Okay. Yeah, Heather might like to. Yes.
How are you doing?
We're just doing fine. I think we've just about finished up.
I was a seaman then.
Huh.
And this is the ship going down under the water.
Now there's a photograph, Heather, in that one,
Yeah,
the
that's
top
what
one in
That's
the
what
back.
the big picture
on
was
the
made
back.
from.
The Semaphore system that was used to send visual ship-to-ship messages. Mr. Schiave, who was 87 years old, was born in New York City in Manhattan on October 17, 1915. My name is Edwin Vandenwagen, and I will be here. The interview and demonstration is at the Chemung Valley Historical Society. Ooh. And let it go, Frank.
Right. What we do this afternoon is visual communication. I don't know how much place there is in the world today for visual communication, but during World War II it was very important because we had to preserve radio silence. And the reasons are obvious. It was transmitted by radio, the enemy could pick it up, it showed them where we were, and they could even decode some of our traffic. So it was all important. The orders came from Admiral Nimitz in Pearl Harbor, and they were just sent one way. The ships were obligated to receive it, but they made no indication that they did that. Therefore, a lot of ships missed, the radio missed for one reason or another, interference or whatever. And those ships had to get the missing groups from other ships. So we were always getting messages from other ships to complete the messages our radio men didn't get. Fortunately, for the first half of World War II, I was on a staff, task group commander. So orders emanated from us, and we were always in charge of a lot of ships. And being a signalman there was one of the best experiences in the world. Although when World War II started, I had what I call a bachelor's degree in World War II, because I had served in the 30s on destroyers, at the best training ground in the world and the toughest. And destroyer signalmen were generally considered the best for different reasons. The signal gangs were always short-handed. Everything those ships did was at high speed, and we had very competent officers and commanding officers. And we operated in lots of groups. It was great. I was in what they call a battle force destroyer. Our mission, and we practiced all the time, was to deliver torpedoes against the enemy battle line. We'd fire our torpedoes at 50 or 60 feet to go under one of our own ships for target. And I used to think we were pretty good, but I hate to stand here and say this, but the Japanese torpedoes were far superior to ours. And I was amazed early in World War II when this became evident. Because I was a destroyer man, I thought we were good. Their torpedoes were better, more powerful. They had greater explosive power, greater speed, greater range, and they were even better aimed. I could name off some circumstances that don't sound good. One of our submarines was one of the best ones as far as record goes. They were over in Tokyo Bay, and they fired a torpedo, and it went out around 360 degrees, came back and hit the submarine that fired it, and sunk it. Just the same. And I've seen them go. Lots of times I'd see the torpedoes hit the water and broach and sink. And one battle we were in, one of the bad ones, at Guadalcanal, it was confusing, great confusing at night. And one of our destroyers, the name of it was the Laffy, found itself right under the guns of a big Japanese battleship, the Hai, H-E-I. They fired their torpedoes and heard them bounce off the hull of the battleship. They didn't go up. Of course, part of that was the fact they hadn't traveled far enough to arm. Anyway, the outcome of that was that little destroyer opened up with their relatively small batteries on the Japanese battleship and demolished the bridge. The Japanese admiral was hurt and they had to retire, but they just demolished that destroyer. I don't know if there are any survivors. And oddly enough, a brand new destroyer came called the Laffy, and they were kamikaze 10 times over Okinawa, but they're still afloat. I went aboard it. Well, this is a Semaphore alphabet. I'll get on through the alphabet and so give you an idea of the letters. It's all on that sheet that you had. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. That's all there is to it. Well, I've taught this to a lot of people, and I learned years ago that when I was giving them material, I would take passages from official Navy publications, communication instructions. It would be like a message is any communication other than a letter sent by a rapid method. Mm-hmm. Well, the students would just kind of yawn. But then I got onto the fact that if I used off-color poetry, and I hate to say this, but it worked. Boy, they were all ears and they learned a lot faster. It was just one of those things.
So go ahead.
Now, girls can also get good at this. I was on an attack transport. We were over Australia. We were anchored off the beach, 500 yards, maybe 1,000 yards, and there was a signal tower over there. So one evening, I had 22 young signalmen. I was 26 at the time. I said, why don't you guys call up that shore station over there and get some practice? And they said, who wants to talk to the Limeys? And I said, I had word that this one is manned by Australian girl signal personnel. Well, that changed it. They went roaring across that bridge and fought for the light. I stood back and watched, and those girls were good. But they practiced every day. They were real good. They were as good as our middle grade Navy signalmen, and that's pretty darn good. When I gave all those talks a few years ago here, Tina used to introduce me. And she actually got, so she knew a little. One time I came in, she said, let me have those flags. And she said, B-A-N-A-N-A, banana. Another one I had taught her was Panama Mama. And that's an unusual one, like P-A-N-A-M-A-M-A. She knows that too.
Can you do Mississippi?
I do that. I'm just going to do that. It's like, what'd you get? M-I-S-S-I-S-I-P-P-I. Big words. I used to sneak up on the kids with words like unconstitutionalities. Well, when you do that, it's good for mental gymnastics too. Not only have to be able to spell the word, but the letter comes through. Unconstitutionalities would look like this. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. That taxes the Illinois. ANTISTABLISHMENTARIANISM. Requires some mental concentration also. Now, at Guadalcanal, the Battle of Guadalcanal lasted 5.5 months. The first day, early in the morning, the first message that I sent by Semaphore was to one of our own ships. And it said very simply, "You are firing at friendly aircraft." See, it was the first day, everybody was a little jumpy. So somebody started a fire, and then everybody started a fire. To show you the importance of this, over in Espiritu Santo, it's on the New Hebrides Islands, the other side of the canal, there's a large ship on the bottom there, right close to the beach. I think they had 6,000 soldiers. They went into a minefield, one of our minefields. And nobody on the bridge, and this is incredible, could read Semaphore or light. They tried to send, "You are standing into minefield." But nobody on the bridge had the knowledge to read it. And that ship went down. They only lost a few men, as far as that goes, but they're right next to the beach. My ship came in there the next day, and there's some boats anchored there as buoys. And somebody told me there's a ship down there, and I said, "How can it be? It's like the Water Street." But it was down there. The water was that deep there. In fact, later in the war, when I went out on the ship, I was second in command of a ship down in New Guinea, and the water was deep off the shore. And we tied the ship up to 2 trees just to be able to put it in the ship's log. See? But this Semaphore was a staple and under good condition, like the definition for Semaphore. Semaphore is a standard system for transmitting dispatches during daylight for short and medium distances. Sometimes, for various reasons, you have to use light. I'll really get into this for now. Employing Morse code, dots and dashes. A dot and a dash is 3 times longer. Like the letter A, dot dash would be, and B is dash and 3 dots. C is dash, dot, dash, dot. And then in Morse code there are numerals. Like in Semaphore, you have to spell out all numerals. But in Morse code, there's dots and dashes like, numeral 1 would be dot and 4 dashes. See. 2 would be like 3, 4. 5 is 5 dots, and then on to 10 with dashes. And this got to be, I wouldn't say secondary, but very necessary. I've sent and received messages using Morse code with big carbon arc lights in the middle of the day out in the Pacific, in Guadalcanal. Many times a division of cruiser would be over the horizon. You could only see the superstructure, but the searchlight tower would be above the horizon. So you look over there and all you could see was just that flashing light. It was quite a thing to see. The bridge of the one attack transport I was on was 70 feet over the water line. And at that height, the horizon is 9 miles away. So anything over the horizon is down the curvature of the earth. So it gave it a different slant. Oh, I had another thing. I'll get back to Semaphore. I always kept on the lookout for clean, intelligent young men who wanted to improve themselves and come up to the bridge and learn signaling. And I remember a few, but I remember one in particular, a kid, Carney from Long Island. just the type of person we were looking for. And I said, when you can get away from the bosun's mate, come up to the bridge. He says, yeah, I'd be glad to. He said, I don't want to be a decade all my life. So he came up and I showed him around and he had immediate perception. He would have been a great surgeon. However, over on one end of the bridge there was a platform, about this high, a little platform with a little rail around. He said, what's that? I said, that's a Semaphore platform. So I grabbed a set of flags and jumped up there. And he said, you mean I got to get up there and let go with both hands? He said, no, fine. And he never came up on the bridge again. That's a prerequisite there. Another thing you have to be also a prerequisite is to be able to get along with officers as they're on the bridge, where the decisions are made. Some officers were easier to get along with than other ones, but some of them were vitriolic, profane, impatient, unreasonable. But you had to be able to take all that. That was just another thing, very important. I could tell stories about an officer that I was with on 5 ships. It was unbelievable. He was at the bottom of his class, a class of 34 at the Naval Academy. But actually, he was one of my biggest boosters. When I first heard that he liked me, ship's barber told me, he said, you know, that Commander Lee thinks a lot of you. I said, what? I said, he gives me the devil every time he sees me. But anyway, that was just one of those things. I mentioned bosun mate. This doesn't have anything to do with seamen, but it's a good story. Bosun mates, as you can probably guess, they were on the seamen. They're usually hairy-chested, leather-lunged, heavily muscled, and so on. A little on the rough side. Well, I had a very good friend, no more, by the way. He made chief bosun mate. He was on a battleship. And his first meal in the chief's quarters, chiefs had their own mess. There was a chief yeoman sitting right across from him at the mess table. And yeomen, they're the people that do the office work and so on, a different type of person. And he kept staring at my friend, and my friend, he said, what the heck are you staring at? And the yeoman said, you're the first bosun mate I ever saw that used a fork. That's one of my favorite stories. That's great. Now, with this Morse code, years ago, Boy Scouts, they could use the Morse code with a long flag, a long handle, and with a flag it described a figure 8 to the right for a dot, and to the left for a dash. So, say the letter L, dot, dash, dot, dot would be like this. It's a lot slower. In fact, when I became a Boy Scout, 1927, I came to the requirements for first class, and they had Semaphore and wigwag, and I thought, I'd never be able to learn this stuff. And you know, as it worked out, I got to be one of the better ones. The reason I say that, I'm not bragging. In 1935-36, I was on a destroyer named the Alden, number 211. Excellent ship. Good skipper, good exec, good everything. Engineering, communication, everything. It was a good ship. In 1935-36, we won visual communication competition for all destroyers, U.S. Navy. There was over 100 of them. Incredible. 2 days competition, and we were number 1. Now that's quite a thing. Not to brag, but as a result, we were allowed to paint the international flag E for excellency on each wing of our bridge, so other ships could see. Well, you can guess what happened. The second one of the other ships said, well, we'll burn these guys. Whenever they had traffic with us, they put their fastest people on and they'd burn us. What that also did was make us even better. One time, down in New Zealand, we had to go for repairs in a British Navy Navy yard. And they had a signal school over there. Incidentally, the English had very good signaling. They had to have so many years of sea duty before they were allowed to wear the rating badge. And they had a week or two every year ashore at school. Well, I found out there was a this Royal Navy Signal School, I invited myself, I got permission to go. So in the morning, I sat in a big classroom. They had mock-ups of fleets and so on. In the afternoon, we all went out to a big athletic field. There was a stage, and there was signal equipment there. They had a Semaphore machine. That Semaphore was a system of chains and sprockets and two rigid steel arms up in the air. And you formed a letter here, down here. So when we went out there, the officer in charge, he asked me, he said, Yank, he said, would you like to try your hand at this? And I thought, sure, I'll show these characters. In my eagerness to show them up, I forgot a couple times. They make 4 letters differently than we do. They make ours this way. They make theirs opposite. X and I, same time double it. I crossed those handles and knocked all the skin off. They said, bloody Yank. I went back and told my guys, and they said, you get back over there, you know what you better do. I took a set of American flags over, and that afternoon, went up on the platform, and I asked the officer in charge if he'd like to have his people see some American Navy Semaphore. He said, sure, Yank, go ahead. And I burnt them good. I went on and on and on. Anyway, I got our respect back. That brings to mind another story.
Okay.
My wife said, you gotta watch out. When I was commissioned, I had a field commission. You probably know that from my other story.
Yeah.
But they sent me back to the States and they put me in charge of all civilian personnel that were going out on patrol frigates. There were going to be 31 of them manned. They were like a destroyer escort.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am, I'm back in the States with a brand new uniform, new gold, ensign. So when I was introduced to all those crews were forming there, by the way. They had them in a big auditorium one noon after lunch. Commander, educational officer took me by the hand up there and to introduce me. Well, I looked out and I knew exactly what was going on. It was thick. I would have done the same thing. Those guys said, who the heck is this college kid going to teach us? They were chiefs, first-class petty officers, hash marks all over the place, old sea dogs. Oh, as I say, it was thick. Well, fortunately, there was a set of flags on a table at one end of the stage. And I went over and got it. And I told them who I was by Semaphore. And I gradually went to 3rd class, 2nd class, 1st class, chiefs. And then I told them some of us like this stuff and we perfect ourselves further. And I burnt their fannies with about 33 words a minute. That changed the whole atmosphere. You could feel the atmosphere change. All of a sudden, I had respect. But up until then, they'd have shoved me in the wastebasket. You know, those are sea stories.
Okay.
With this Morse code, dots and dashes, there's a system, and actually, in the old Navy off the coast of California, and all those Pacific fogs outside of San Diego and San Pedro, an island called San Clemente. It's 60 miles out. And we'd be anchored out there on a terrific fog. And on at least 2, maybe 3 occasions, I had to send and receive message to our division flagship using this. So a dot is like this on it. This is usually, of course, a big ship's bell. This would be a dot, and a dash would be a pair. So the word fog would be like this. Dot, dot, F, O, and G is dash, dash, dot. Just a difference in, this one is good for concentration.
I can see.
Another thing, this is the flag, you had pictures.
Mm-hmm.
This is some of them. International flags.
Mm-hmm.
You see them in lots of ads. These are alphabet flags, and there are special flags, special numeral flags, numeral pennants. There's about one. Okay, try. The man who's my 2nd task group commander, he was Commodore and he made Admiral. And he was death on smoke. If any, we had ships back of us and there was just a little wisp of smoke. he'd just nod over to me. And I would send him, "Stop smoke." And then watch me. 2 minutes later, I said, "Expedite, stop smoke." 2 minutes more, "Explain your delay." If that didn't do it, it was a plain language message that he had written, and it said, "Commanding officer report aboard this command immediately upon entering port." And he knew what he was going to get.
What was the final grade that you reached when you?
Lieutenant senior grade. The last thing in the world I expected to be was an officer.
Mhm.
In May of '43, we were in Pago Pago, American Samoa. I remember it well. My wife's birthday was May 1st. She's a real tourist, by the way. We had new Marines out, come out the States. We were giving them practice landings under tropical conditions. And the day before the operation, Commodore's messenger came up to the signal bridge and he said, "Hey, Skip, the old man wants you down in his office." I didn't even know where it was. We never went near that place. This guy was class of 1911 at the Naval Academy. He never smiled. I was with him on 5 ships. Never smiled. He was tough. I would have died with him and not known the difference. I meant duty, dedication. Well, he was sitting at his desk, and very abruptly, I walked in and said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Schiave," he said, "I'm sending a letter to Washington recommending you for a commission." He said, "What do you think of it?" or something like that. Well, I was shocked. He could have hit me with a bucket of ice water. And when I collected my thoughts, I said, "Well, sir, as a matter of fact, I don't think much of it. I haven't been to college or the academy, and I don't consider myself qualified to hold it down properly." And I said, "In the second place, all I hope to do is make chief, and I expect to be chief shortly," which was right. Well, he scowled because he couldn't understand anyone that didn't want to be commissioned officer. And he said, "If I didn't think you could hold it down properly, as you said, I wouldn't be recommending you for it." He said, "Do you understand that?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Anytime you feel badly about holding a commission," he said, "you look at these college-trained officers that they're sending me from the States." I got the heck out of there. So I figured he threw it away.
Yeah.
That was in May. Way over in October 16th. We were combat loaded for another invasion in Bowmanville. We rendezvoused with another task group. Ship that took position on the beam had a lot of my old friends. I had been on there. And we always, unofficially, we did a lot of talking we weren't supposed to do. They called me a lot of dirty names. And informed me I was no longer a friend of theirs. And I was innocent. I thought, what the heck is this? Well, then an official dispatch came over from that ship, which was Coast Guard men. They had information from Washington that my ship didn't, being regular Navy. And I had been commissioned since July 20th. In other words, I'd been a commissioned officer for 3 months and didn't know it. I lived in the cruise quarters. So they moved me in the middle of an afternoon on a big ship, combat loaded, from the cruise quarters to the officer's wardroom. It's one of the greatest transitions in the world. There's a fence there that it's hard to describe. One of the staff officers took me to where I was supposed to sit at the ensign's table, and I was already senior to 2 of them. I sat 3 from the foot of the table. And I noticed that in front of my plate there was a little brass thing there, and it wasn't anyways. So I said to the ensign on the right, I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well," he said, "that's where the miss boys start all the terrains and the platters." Gee, I wanted to see what happened and how much they took and all that. It was that much of a transition. However, it all worked out well. I didn't have uniform, I just had survivor's clothing. And they sent me back to the States not too long later. And I was in Long Beach, California. I just got in uniform. And I walked down Broadway, and I saw 3 girls in uniform. First girls I'd ever seen in uniform. 3 waves. I looked at them, eyes about this big. They got up to me and they said, "Morning, sir." Holy crap. I returned the salute and ducked into it. They said, "Hey, what is this?" But it worked out well. What saved me, I shouldn't say saved. What helped me, I had all those years of sea duty. And there's no substitute for that. And another, the fact that the guys like me. And that helps. Because it doesn't have to be. If they don't like it, curtains. So I had something pretty good there. Well, I stayed there. I moved my wife down to New York, and I grew tired of it there. I put in for sea duty, and I got it right away. Well, the district personnel officer called me. He said, "What do you do?" He said, "You don't have to go back there." And I said,
What year was this, Frank?
it was 44, early 44. I said, "Oh, I want to get back out there." I left a lot of my friends out there. So I went back out, had hazardous duty, as far as that goes. My wife almost divorced me, she was pretty mad. But I was junior watch officer on this ship. Our executive officer was a graduate of the University of Texas, and really unfit for sea duty. So we had a tow back of us, 120-foot air sea rescue. We were taken around through the Panama Canal on the west coast. So we're just leaving New York, and we had this tow back of us. And we're going past Sandy Hook, and the executive officer he was officer of the deck. And as you know, the officer of the deck is responsible to the captain for everything. It's the final authority. Well, this guy, he had the mess boy bring up an armchair from the officer's wardroom and a pitcher of lemonade and a novel he was reading. So he's sitting there. He couldn't see out. There was a man at the wheel, a helmsman, and there was a lookout. The officer of the deck, who should be the most alert of the whole works, is reading a book, sipping lemonade. Well, the captain, who was a good man, he came up to the bridge, and I was up on the flying bridge just waiting to see what was going to happen. Captain came up, and it didn't take him long to take for this. I wish I could give you word for word what he said. It worked out very well. See, I've been through the Panama Canal 7 times. I enjoyed every one of them. Coming up, that trip, we came up from Panama. We had going up to San Pedro, California, 3,000 some miles. And the captain got hurt. We put into a place called Manzanillo, Mexico. It's down by Acapulco. And he left the ship with permission, American Vice Consul. That made me the commanding officer. So listen here, from the time I was enlisted, man, I was in command of a ship on the ocean with 2,200 miles to go. Well, it worked out okay. I wrote up captain's night orders, set the course north, and I went into a little cabin back of the bridge. And I was just lying there, thinking about it. And right on the door was the officer of the deck. I said, "Yes," he said, "Captain," he said, "white light sighted, bearing 270 true." So I said, "Very well, I'll be right out." So I stepped out, and I thought, hey, there's nobody else on this darn ship but me. All those other years, I had a door to go rap on. Captain, white light sighted, but it worked out. I say, good crew, good cooperation, and so on. Well, let's see, I'm getting way away from communication here. In San Diego, back in the old days, when we get underway on the destroyers, especially with the whole fleet, destroyers battle force, there'd be 48 destroyers and 3 flagships, and our admiral on a cruiser. They were getting underway as a group, and the procedure is to test out whistling sirens. So for the first time, they had trusted me to do it. I was just a seaman kid. And the procedure is very rigid. The senior officer of the admiral's, they test out first. 3 blasts on the siren and 1 on the whistle. The siren screeches. It goes, whirr, 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 and then the whistle. The admiral's ship, the squadron commanders, whirr, 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 whirr. Division commanders, whirr, 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 whirr. Ship next to us, division commander, they tested out, whirr, whirr, whirr. I tested out backwards. Our ship went, whirr, 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 whirr. Well, the captain hadn't been on the bridge, but he was then. He said, "Oh," and there I was. I still had both hands up on the 2 handles. I don't know if my face was white or if my face was red. I guess he figured I suffered or not. One story, I hope I'm not repeating something I put on that other interview.
It's okay.
But in Guadalcanal the first day, I was very glad to be there, of course. And we had a bugle master in that ship. The Navy only had 7 of them. And this guy was marvelous. He blew those bugle calls the way they were meant to be. Like if he blew general quarters, battle stations, you would run as fast as you could go to get there. But he had a little suffix on the double and you went faster. It was just one of those things. Well, this guy was marvelous. Well, anyway, the first night, Guadalcanal, we had our baptism of fire. We had low-level bombing, high-level bombing, and torpedo. And he blew evening colors, so we faced that, salute that. The bugler blew evening colors. And way over in the distance was an island called Sabo Island. I didn't know that then. But it occurred to me then it looked like a big tombstone over there. Sabo Island is now where they call it Iron Bottom Bay because there are so many ships sunk there.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a nifty book home I'd be glad to bring in any time. The Lost Ships at Guadalcanal. And I was with a good percentage of those ships when they were sunk, enemy and American. It was almost unbelievable. Well, anyway, the thought that occurred to me that looked like a tombstone, well, it sure proved right, because the next night, over 1,000 American sailors were killed right there. The Japanese came in and sunk 3 of our heavy cruisers and an Australian cruiser. So I never forgot the feeling there. But I was so glad I had tears going down both cheeks. So I wouldn't have come home for $1 million. We had one, her daughter was 3 years old. And I'm sure a lot of the other guys felt the same way. But Guadalcanal got pretty bad, pretty hairy. And as I say, 5.5 months. I was in and out of there all of that time. Many times we got run out because we didn't have enough firepower to stay. The Japanese made merry there. And they proved to be very good at night tactics, better than we were in those days, really. See, our Admiral Gormley, was in charge of the Guadalcanal operation and was never there. He didn't show up. And things got bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we lost battles. The Marines were getting an awful bad night. We had great trouble getting in and out of there with supplies. It was just, but one night he got a message from the beach, condition black. So I said, what's that? He said, that means counter-invasion. Well, you know, and our admiral had already issued orders to build airstrips somewhere else because he figured we couldn't hold Guadalcanal. It was that bad. Well, about then, Admiral King in Washington got onto it, and he relieved that admiral. And we didn't know it at that time, but it was a day or so later, we had our ships in a single column coming into Tulagi, across from Guadalcanal, like a river. And there's a bend, and up on a hill, just like the hill over here, there's a big yellow sign with black block letters. So I put the glass on it, and Commodore said, what's that say? And I said, it said, kill Japs, exclamation point. And the second line said, kill more Japs, exclamation point. And the third line, I don't want to quote, but it was signed Admiral Bull Halsey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody felt better. I felt better. All of a sudden, here we were. And a couple of days later, he came out with his classic message. It said, attack, repeat, attack. Things just changed. Of course, he made a few big blunders too. Anybody in his
Oh, he was a good man.
did. Well, then, when I went back out, I got up in the Philippines when the kamikazes really started big. And we were at Lady. And we were getting underway with a big convoy heading for the island of Mindoro. That was the end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
And the Japanese history proves they mistook us for MacArthur coming back. He hadn't got back yet. So they went all up. Navy, official Navy history, so we had 334 kamikazes. 3 days.
Do you mind explaining what a kamikaze is? Explain what a kamikaze is.
Yeah, I should get into that. The kamikazes were suicide planes. I know I was an old veteran when that started, but you know, it was a different feeling to see a guy coming right down. He knew he was going to be dead in the next couple of seconds. He's coming right in your face. In one day in the Philippines, it was December 26th, 44. We lost the ship ahead of us and the ship alongside of us, which was an LST, an ammunition ship, 1,000 yards away. It almost blew us out of the water at a half a mile, still in our bridge. Unbelievable, it's hard to describe. After that happened, I was up on the flying bridge and I dove down to the navigation bridge. The helmsman was knocked out. And they put the wheel over hard right because there was a wall of water coming at us. Like it's hard to believe. The ship blew a 360-degree hole in the ocean. And there was another one right back of that first one, but by then I had the boat. We almost climbed the hill. But then I looked around to see what else is going on. Over in the port bow, there's another ship, a Liberty ship, burning, dead in the water. She'd been hit and burned. I didn't even know it. You know, when I was giving these lectures there and I told some of these stories, the kids said, "Were you scared?" I said, "As far as that goes, you were aware you could get hurt. That wasn't what I was scared of. I was scared that I was going to make the wrong decision. I had a lot of responsibility. I had a lot of men. I picked all the targets we shot at, from both beams forward. And what I was scared of is I was going to have us concentrating on this guy, and maybe, because they came from all over. Actually, we lost 8 ships on that trip. We found out then too that we had heard that the Japanese were training boys just out of high school, and all they learned how to do was pilot a plane. And they knew nothing about navigation, gunnery, nothing. And some of those airstrips were only 30 miles from where we were. So at night, it would keep a flare up over us all night. It's good for your nerves, you know. You're hoping to see a cloud. And all those kids had to do was take off, see the flare, and go over, go get somebody. That was good. It was, that's where the kamikaze really came into its own. But an odd story, the day before we got underway on this trip, I went over to get the operation order for the trip. And the Navy, U.S. Navy, Admiral had written it. There was a sentence I'll never forget. It said the only defense against so-called suicide planes was a concentrated fire of small caliber weapons at close range, which was true. But the Navy still wouldn't admit they were suiciding. And they had suicided a cruiser only 1,000 yards from us the very night before. But that's the way it went. I used to spring the news. Anyway, actually, all that training that I had back on those little tin cans, the first bosun mate I worked for didn't even use English, just profanity. But I learned a lot from those people. My only regret was that I didn't take a college course in high school and got into the Naval Academy. My mother and father didn't know about college entrance. All they knew was work and pay your bill. So I should have had, I was commissioned, and as I say, it was a real honor to get a field commission. But the best thing is to have that background, the academic background, and then go up in the Philippines. After we were disabled, we got towed out of there to a place they had already built a rough officers club with whiskey, alcohol. So I had nothing much to do on the ship. We were waiting for a tug to take us down to New Guinea. So I went over to one afternoon. I met a belligerent drinker. I was sitting around a table, lieutenant commanders on the wall, and I was lieutenant junior grade. So Naval Academy lieutenant commander, he kept looking at me. I knew what he was looking for. Right. He said, "Lieutenant," he said, "what class were you in? Or what midshipman school did you go to?" And I said, "Oh, sir, I had none of that. I was commissioned from signalman first class by the president." He looked at me like, he said, "Well, hell, man." He said, "You must have a lot of trouble learning to navigate, not having had the advantages of higher education and higher mathematics." I said, "Well, Commander, I've been navigator of the ship that I'm on in 9 months. She hadn't been on the rocks yet." Well, I had a couple more drinks. He didn't want any more to do with me. And I said, I'm not belligerent, but I figured, I gotta say a little more.
Certainly.
I said, Commander, if you'd open up your eyes a little bit and look around this Navy Yard, you'd find the best navigators we have are these old chief quartermasters. And some of those people didn't graduate from grammar school, and they're holding up people like you all over the Navy. Now, there's quite an element of truth in this, because in the old days, when we were all over the fleet, every noon, we had to run up latitude and longitude. And of course, the Admiral's flagship taking all this in. The chief quartermaster, he had a ship's position for us, and the ship's navigator, who was a Naval Academy graduate, he had one. 9 times out of 10, they'd give us the chief's position to run up. This wasn't true in all cases, but a lot of those guys were sharp. Good men, good men. But the whole thing, for me, has been a great experience. As my wife said, my biggest drawback is I don't know enough to shut up.
You've done great. You've done great. That's terrific. Okay?
Yeah, okay. Is that all right? I can go on with sea stories.
I think it's...
One of the best honors I consider that the Commodore, Chess Group Commander, my battle station, the last 3 ships I was on with him, read him. And he was a tough guy. He had only the best qualified people going. He was so tough, like if some junior officer he asked some junior officer a question, and this officer unfortunately said, well, just a minute, sir, I'll go look it up. It was like, don't come back here. He was that bad. But he was one tough guy. But I had the greatest respect for him. As I say, I would have died without knowing, without worrying about it. And some of his best friends were cruiser division commanders. One of them, Norman Scott, was one of the best of all the admirals out there. He was the only one at the Naval Canal that actually achieved a victory over the Japanese in that time. And he was killed. Admiral Ainsworth, another cruiser admiral, dead. But you know, it was just that way. Guadalcanal was that bad. Whenever we'd go there, different destroyers had been sunk that we knew well, ships, admirals, and so on. It was quite a 5 months period there. I'm glad to have been there. I'd go back there. My wife's crazy enough to go back, but I would. It was just that. That's what I was trained for. Now here I'm telling how good I am, but that's what I was trained for. The fact that I did well is only the result of good Navy training and discipline. And you didn't talk back to anybody in the old days, as far as that goes. Those officers, for the most part, were competent and well done. And I was only 17 when I went in the Navy. I was aware of the fact that I graduated from high school at 16, and I hadn't half grown up yet. So I decided I went in the Navy to grow up. It was a good Navy. I was in the Navy 2 weeks and had my nose broken. They put me in the ring with a Polish guy. His name, incidentally, is aptly named Stanley Wysocki. He's from Greenfield, Mass. He beat the living daylights out of me. I couldn't fight, I just had never been off the street. But then 3 months later, they put me in with him again, and I had learned a little to reverse the decision. But see, that also speaks well for the Navy training. See? But you had no choice. If somebody kicked about it, the Navy's attitude was, if you don't like it, go home to your mother. You didn't get sympathy, you got training. So, what else can I say about some of those ships? One time I was up on Semaphore, Searchlight Tower, was at noon, all on. I had one of my signal kids up there with me, manning one of the big signal searchlights, this big. And we heard, I was calling it out to the kid, he was reading, and he said, we're gonna get it. One of those dive bombers came down after us, the Naval, like, you know. And he's straight, but the darn fool strafed us what we call athwart ships across. Here, we're 535 feet long. This Didn't kill anybody, he almost killed us, we were amidships. If he'd come the other way, he'd have killed a lot of people. The Japanese, they pulled some funny stunts. One time we had our ships in a single column. We had a condition red air attack. 1-0 came. So we're the flagship, the launch was back to us. This guy came, he dove and he went right down, flashing down the port side. Well, up on the second bridge, we had 20mm anti-aircraft all over the place. And one of them was an Italian on the ship. He was the ship's tailor, Nick Borgiano, and he was good. I stood over and back and watched. He was doing perfect shooting. When you're with the tracers, if your lead just right, it looks like your tracers curve back into the target. And he missed. And so did everybody miss. And everybody missed back there. Well, Nick, he stood there a minute. He took his helmet off and he threw it on the deck. He unbuckled his harness for the
jacket.
And he started to swear in liquid, fiery Italian. Did you ever hear a man Italian swear? You know, it's a work of art. No, it's fiery. Expressive, the 2 mile over. And I said, somebody said, I wonder that plane doesn't blow up back there. And just then somebody said, here he comes again. He came down the other side. And nobody got him again. And he went home. Never forgot that.
That's pretty good.
I got another little humor story. Down in New Zealand, one of my favorite countries, I just love it down there. I had to furnish a couple men for a working party for stores. So stealing food in the Navy is not a crime, you know. They stole a whole crate of apples. They brought it up to the bridge where I was. They said, where are we going to put it? So I said, dump it in the speed flag bay. It's a box with all the alphabet flags, smaller size. It's only used to indicate the speed you're making. Well, obviously, my reasoning was in time of war, you're not going to run up anything. You tell a submarine how fast you're going. So I said, dump it in the speed flag bay. So we got on our way with a big group of ships. There were some ship captains in that group who were having trouble keeping station. So the Commodore decided we'd use speed flags for just 2 hours to make it easier. The first flag that came out of there, an apple came out with it, and it bounced down the ladder to the navigation bridge where the captain was. That apple, I can still see it. It went boom, boom, boom. And there it was. Well, they put us all on report. And, we were supposed to face the captain when we got back in port. But we had a bad trip that time, and they just took everybody off report. I'll never forget the sight of that infernal apples going down that ladder. Well, I think I better stop.
Okay.